The world is spinning on its axis properly again. The most popular driver in NASCAR has again picked up a victory, Adam. That much-needed win for him and maybe for the sport.
How many times have we used that cliche? You just keep knocking on the door. You keep knocking on the door, and eventually you're going to go through, right? And that's kind of what's happened. We come out of the gates in 2024 a little slow with the 9 team. And some of those thoughts late last year about does he need a crew chief change and do we need to revamp things with the 9 group, we're starting to creep back in. And then they knock off some top 10s and then top 5s, nearly won Martinsville, and then boom, they go out and deliver at Texas. And I'm happy for Chase, and I just can't say enough good things about the way he handled it. And not that he's ever not handled things well, but he's just a class guy, and he stuck with those that got him where he is, and he was very humbled and gracious in his win. And I hope it's the start of something magical for that team. I hope they have a great year from this point forward, and I think all signs point toward that's happening.
Well, and that's the thing, Zach. I mean, there has been a lot of question about, and he has admitted that he's had difficulty with this car. And he's had a lot of trouble with it. And, he hasn't won a road course race with this car. And yet he's talked about it. I talked to him at Circuit of the Americas about that. And he goes, we've had good performances. He says, not like we've been totally out to lunch. We've had good performances. We're making gains on it. It just they hadn't gotten over the top yet. They hadn't really contended for wins until the last couple of weeks.
Well, that's it. I feel like the biggest thing for Chase, and he's talked about this too, is you want to be up front contending for wins and contending for those top 5s. Leading laps is a big part of that. And that's one thing we really haven't seen out of that 9 car lately is really leading laps until Martinsville. Martinsville, was kind of the first sign we got of, is this team really back? Then you go to a completely different track at Texas Motor Speedway, and they were back in a big way. Obviously, that first caution helped them out strategy-wise when Jimmy Johnson spun, but from that point, they were able to stay up there and really fight all day long. It is really impressive to me, the resilience that he, Alan Gustafson, and that entire 9 team have shown, to Adam's point, because there are a lot of moments throughout the last year where he's recovering from his injury. He's suspended after the Coke 600 last year. There's a lot of moments throughout the course of that last season where there could have been a lot of give up, honestly. And it doesn't seem like there really was. It seems like there was a lot of resilience. Alan basically called it stubbornness, and it really has paid off for that team. You've seen them be able to rise up to that level. And it shows, too, they're 4th in points now. 4th, I don't know where they stand after Texas, but I know going into Texas, they had the 4th best average running position, according to the NASCAR Loop data as well. So this team certainly seems like it's back, and if they get just that little bit more confidence heading into these summer months, this could be a really dangerous team as we approach the playoffs.
Well, and you talked about it, Adam. Very respectful after the win. No huge celebration. He did the Polish victory lap and had the awareness of, hey, this was Alan Kulwicki's sponsor, and give a tip of the hat to him. It's actually hard for me to believe that Hooters had not been to victory lane since Alan Kulwicki drove that car. But I mean, for him to have that level of awareness after all he'd been through, Chase Elliott had been through, and to be able to reference that, and that speaks a lot. And I think that surprised a lot of people that's where his head was, and that it wasn't just this gregarious celebration.
Well, and it speaks to who he is, because it would be very easy with the weight that he carries on his shoulders in the sport, being the most popular driver, to make it all about you when you finally break through, and not do it in an egotistical way, just naturally be so relieved that you let it out. And he right away starts deflecting in every direction, whether it's the historical perspective of Hooters and honoring Alan Kulwicki, who beat his father in 92 for the championship, or giving credit to the team, or thanking Rick Hendrick and everyone at HMS for sticking with him as if there was ever any doubt what his future would be. The other thing that needs to be pointed out, and Zach kind of touched on this, but I think it really garners some attention, and that is what a team effort this was. We referenced that early pit stop, and they run long, right? And so the strategy in the early going netted them 15, 17 positions, whatever it was. Once they got in the top 10, they stayed there. And then ultimately what allowed them to stay in the game and gain the track position in the latter part of the race was their unbelievable execution on pit road. I know there's quite a debate going on on social media right now between the various teams who actually has had the fastest pit stop with a single lug nut. We'll let someone else decide that in their stopwatches. The reality is, regardless of what the stopwatch says, they were gaining spots and doing all the things they needed to do. So the strategy was there. The execution on pit road was there. You give credit to the crew chief. You give credit to the team. And then ultimately on those late restarts, Chase was money in getting it done behind the wheel. So this across the board was a real team effort.
And Chase has talked about, Zach, that this whole going through what they've been through the last year and a half has actually made this team closer.
And I think you see it really in Chase's demeanor at the racetrack. I think you see that in his driving style, because this is obviously, this car requires a totally different sense behind the wheel than what we had previously with the Gen 6 car. And it's taken a little bit for him to really, as teams learned this car and how to properly set it up and other drivers got better at it, it's taken Chase a little bit longer to get there. And he's admitted that himself. What we've seen from him is that he's been willing to put in the work for it. And I think that's been the really jarring thing for me, is he is a guy who could very easily just sort of, all right, yeah, I'm here, but that's never been his style. He's always intended on being a guy that you are not surprised to see in victory lane, in the media center post-race, because he's winning. Last year was the first year since, I think, 2018 that he did not win a race, let alone he was winning multiple races a year, every year through that 2022 season. So last year was definitely an anomaly. I don't think we've seen the last of the number 9 team in victory lane this season. I feel like, much like a driver's first win, this kind of opens the floodgates a little bit. We've seen what Byron has been able to do. We've seen what Larson has been able to do. Bowman has been running better. He's not maybe got the results to show for it, but the 48 team has been improved as well. I would be very surprised if we don't see more of Chase Elliott in victory lane this year.
How much, we talked to Adam about the weight of the long streak without winning. How much additional weight was there of the fact that Byron and Larson had been winning and running up front?
That's so funny. That's exactly where I wanted to go, because if you rewind to October of 2022, the last time Chase had won prior to what we saw Sunday in Texas, you look at what Larson and Byron had done. That's 15 wins between the two of them. Both of them made the championship 4 last year. And it wasn't just the 15 wins. Byron gets number 300 for the organization. He wins the Daytona 500. He wins the magical 40th anniversary race at Martinsville when, oh, by the way, Chase was there and just couldn't quite get by him. So to me, it wasn't as much about the fact that Chase wasn't winning. It was what his teammates were doing and the magnitude of those victories that had to make it very difficult when he wasn't the guy getting the checkered flag. But all that's behind him now is an organization. They've combined for 5 wins, and as Zach said, it appears to be the first of many as we look throughout the remainder of 2024, not just for the 9 team, but HMS as a whole.
You see the same burden now lifted?
Oh, completely. I think it's definitely a motivating factor to see the 24 and the 5 doing as well as they've been doing. And there's been a lot of chatter for the last maybe 3 years that Kyle Larson has been at Hendrick Motorsports, that he's the guy, right? There was a little bit of conversation for a little bit that there was a 1A and a 1B between Larson and Elliott. There wasn't much of that talk within the last year and a half. But yet we've seen that 9 team continue to just build sort of almost under the radar, which is crazy to say for the 6-time defending most popular driver. But I think that there has been a narrative of this team struggling, but they've been struggling to the standards that they set for themselves, right? Because they were performing so well that we just expected them to be top 3, and if they weren't, they were off their game. So I think we're closer to seeing the 9 team in prime form as we expect them to be going forward here.